Welcome back to Geowatch Weekly, the podcast that breaks down global tech supply chain trends you can't afford to miss. I'm Charlene Chen.
And I'm your co-host, Jerry Chen. Today, three big stories from the high-stake world of semiconductors.
Why Jensen Huang agreed to Trump's controversial chip export deal with China, Intel CEO under political fire, and a rare national security probe into TSMC's 2-nanometer leak.
Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's start with this US chip export policy because it sounds, well, pretty groundbreaking. Back in August 2025, the Trump administration made a deal.
Has allowed NVIDIA and AMD to export certain AI chips to China, specifically NVIDIA's H20 GPU and AMD's MI308 accelerator.
But here's the twist, right? The condition attached.
Exactly. That was really the novel part. These companies had to give 15% on 1 to 5% of their sales revenue from China directly to the US Treasury.
15%. I heard Trump initially wanted even more.
Yeah, but the reports say he asked for 20% but settled for 15 after some negotiations. It's directly monetizing export controls. Never really seen that before.
So, what was the justification? Why let these specific chips go through at all?
Well, Trump's stated reason was, and I quote, that the US possesses much better chips.
Implying these H20s weren't the absolute top tier.
Kind of, suggesting that the really cutting edge stuff, like the Blackwell architecture, which is way more powerful for complex AI, wouldn't get approved easily. Not unless they were significantly, downgraded.
And Jensen Huang was central to this deal happening.
Absolutely. Reports suggest that he lobbied heavily, both in DC and in Beijing. He really pushed this idea.
What was his argument?
He basically convinced them that the super strict export bans would backfire, that it was smarter to keep China sort of hooked on American tech.
Rather than forcing them to develop their own alternatives faster.
Precisely. And as a sweetener, Huang apparently promised a massive Nvidia investment, up to 500 billion in AI infrastructure and supercomputers right here in the US.
Wow, 500 billion. That sounds like it would definitely help seal a deal. But did everyone buy into this? Were there any pushbacks?
Oh, for sure. It wasn't smooth sailing. Huang apparently hit a snag earlier when Elon Musk reportedly told Trump that letting advanced chips into China was a threat to the US technology leadership.
Interesting. And what about the Chinese side? How'd they see Huang?
Well, there was this nickname some Chinese engineers apparently have for him, Magic Taylor.
Magic Taylor. What does that imply?
It suggests a grudging respect for his skill in designing chips that just meet US rules but still works well for the Chinese market. Like he's tailoring the tech perfectly.
Huh. It highlights that tightrope walk he's doing.
It really does. But back in the US, this whole pay to play thing is getting a lot of criticism.
I can imagine. On what grounds?
Well, some are calling it an unconstitutional export tax, which the Constitution explicitly forbids. Others says it violates the Export Control Reform Act, which says you can't charge fees for export licenses.
So it fundamentally changes what export controls are for.
Exactly. From a national security tool to potentially, a way to raise money for the government, a fiscal lever.
That is a critical shift. What does that mean for global trade if a country can just charge for access to its tech?
That's the big worry, especially in national security circles. It sets a precedent. Could it undermine the whole point of these controls? Turn policy into another negotiation about revenue.
Blurring the lines between economic goals and security goals.
Precisely. Apparently, some officials were even considering resigning over it. And interestingly, even though the Chinese government reportedly warned its own companies against buying the H20 for security reasons, demand is still expected.
Yeah, because they don't really have strong domestic alternatives yet, especially for inference tasks. That's using the AI model in real time, not just training it, and they rely heavily on NVIDIA's software ecosystem for that. So, how do the Chinese officially view this policy?
They seem to see it as the Trump administration using trade policy as a fiscal tool, a way to boost US income.
And maybe also ease tensions slightly.
Perhaps it's definitely seen as a more flexible, more transactional approach to export controls. The whole revenue sharing idea is certainly new.
It definitely fits the America First pattern, doesn't it?
Squarely. You remember Trump publicly calling out companies like Intel and Apple, pushing them into prioritizing American manufacturing?
Right. And while this deal is currently just Nvidia and AMD,
The White House spokesman did suggest it might be extended. Other chip makers could face similar arrangements down the line.
okay, so this pressure for American manufacturing, it's not just shaping new deals, it's also hitting established companies hard.
Which brings us perfectly to Intel, a real cornerstone of American tech.
Yeah, in August 2025, their CEO Lip was really under fire, wasn't he? Directly from President Trump.
He was. Trump publicly demanded Tan to resign. The accusations was a high conflict of interest because of Tan's personal investment in some Chinese firms with alleged military or government ties.
And that put Intel's federal subsidies at risk, big ones.
Huge ones. Nearly 8 billions from the CHIP Acts were potentially on the line.
How did Tan respond?
He pushed back, basically asserted he followed all ethical rules, emphasized his US residency. He actually met with Trump at the White House on August 11th.
To clear the air?
Seems like it. To explain his background, reiterate Intel's commitment to manufacturing in the US, and apparently it worked to some extent. Trump's tone softened afterwards. He called the meeting very meaningful.
But even with that political drama potentially easing, Intel had other big problems, right? Internal ones.
Oh, absolutely. Craig Barrett, a former Intel executive, was very publicly critical of Tan's strategy.
What was Barrett's main issue?
He called the decision to delay investment in their next gen 14A chip process, waiting for customer commitments first. He called it a joke. Strong words.
So, what does that kind of public criticism from a former insider tell us?
It really underscores the intense debate happening within Intel. They're struggling with financial problems, fierce competition from TSMC and Samsung, and just the enormous cost of developing these new chip processes.
So, risk versus reward. Go aggressive like Barrett wants, or be more cautious.
That's the core tension. Barrett argued Intel desperately needs a huge cash injection, something like 40 billion.
40 billion? Where would that even come from?
His proposals were pretty bold. Get Intel's 8 biggest customers, Apple, Google, folks like that, to chip in $5 billion each.
Wow, because Intel is crucial for national security.
That was Barrett's point. He stressed that Intel really is the only US company with a shot at matching TSMC at the cutting edge. He also pushed for immediate investment in things like high NA EUV machines, the really advanced lithography tools.
And suggested tariffs, maybe?
Yeah, tariffs on advanced chips imported to boost domestic demands for whatever Intel could produce.
So Intel is really struggling. Billions in losses, layoffs, production delays. Tan's leadership is critical.
Absolutely. It's not just about Intel's future, it's tied directly into those America First goals and the bigger geopolitical picture.
Which, interestingly, brings us to our third story, the alleged leak at TSMC involving their 2 nanometer tech.
Right. This one involved former and current employees from both TSMC and Tokyo Electron, a key equipment supplier. It sparked all sorts of espionage talk.
Understandably, Taiwan considers this 2 nanometer process a core national technology. It's like a state secret, basically vital for their economic security.
So, when TSMC reported that confidential data on this process was illegally obtained, it became a whole major national security investigation. A rare one, too.
This surfaced around early July 2025, right?
That's right. And Taiwan's IP prosecutors confirmed it was the first time they handled a case involving trade secrets designated at this core national technology level.
How will they even detect the breach?
According to the prosecutor's office, it was flagged during the routine cybersecurity checks. TSMC noticed some unusual file access by an employee.
So, just standard monitoring caught it?
Apparently so. An internal investigation quickly followed, and they concluded confidential 2 nanometer info had likely been compromised by current and former staff. So TSMC filed a criminal complaint, and the formal investigation kicked off in late July.
And people were arrested?
Yes, 3 individuals were detained without visitation rights. One was named Chen, an employee at Tokyo Electron, but formerly an engineer at TSMC.
Okay.
And the other two, Wu and Jay, were currently TSMC engineers. Sources seem to suggest the leak was found quickly, partly because the method wasn't very sophisticated.
Not exactly a Mission Impossible scenario, then.
Doesn't sound like it. Investigators are also apparently looking into whether other Taiwanese employees at Japanese firms might have been involved too.
So, what's the inside story? There are some reports trying to piece it together.
Yeah, our residential reporter, Monica Chen, spoke to industry sources there in Hsinchu. According to her reporting, it started with a TSMC engineer, let's call him Mr. A, who wanted a job at Tokyo Electron.
Okay,
Mr. A allegedly photographed some TSMC materials, maybe to show off his technical knowledge, and shared them with Chen at Tokyo Electron, who was a personal friend.
and Chen then shared them inside Tokyo Electron?
That's the report. Chen supposedly forwarded them internally. Later, somehow, this exchange got reported back to TSMC.
Okay, so TSMC found out.
Right. But when TSMC asked Tokyo Electron for access to Chen's work devices, Tokyo Electron refused, citing confidentiality, standard corporate stuff.
So, what did TSMC do?
They looked at Mr. A's personal phone and laptop instead, and allegedly, that's where they found group chats containing images of 2 nanometer documents taken by those other two engineers, Wu and Jay.
Ah, so Wu and Jay were the ones who actually took the pictures of the sensitive documents.
It seems prosecutors viewed their actions as more serious, which led to their arrest. Interestingly, Mr. A, the first engineer, was just charged and reassigned, nor were others in the group chat.
And Chen at Tokyo Electron, while involved, wasn't thought to be cooperating with Wu and Jay.
Correct. All three arrested men apparently graduated from the same university, National Tsinghua University.
Okay, so if this is a story, why might it be, as you said earlier, less dramatic than the headlines?
Well, TSMC's 2 nanometer process is incredibly advanced, yes. Mass production is slated for late 2025, but actually replicating it takes much more than just photos.
Way more.
Experts stress it needs decades of expertise, huge teams, super specialized, extremely expensive equipment. You simply can't reverse engineer it from a few pictures of documents or screens.
So maybe it was more about individuals trying to look good or share knowledge inappropriately rather than state sponsored espionage.
That seems plausible based on these reports. It also highlights a practice that, while maybe common informally in the past, engineers snapping pics of technical stuff for discussion, it's definitely risky.
I bet those practices are getting tightened up now.
Oh, absolutely. This whole incident is a major wake up call for security across the industry.
What about the speculation about who might benefit? China was the obvious first thought.
Right. But analysis pointed out that Chinese firms like Huawei or SMIC are still struggling with 7 nanometers or 5 nanometer tech under current export controls. 2 nanometer data isn't immediately useful for them right now.
What about other competitors, Rapidus in Japan?
They were mentioned because of Tokyo Electron's connection, but their process is based on IBM's technology. It's fundamentally different from TSMC's, and TSMC is a massive customer to Tokyo Electron, so Tokyo Electron deliberately leaking would be shooting themselves in the foot.
Samsung and Intel are the ones really racing TSMC to 2 nanometer.
They are, but both have reputations, and in Intel's case, deep ties to the US government. Industrial espionage seems incredibly risky and unlikely for them.
Still, the fallout has been real, even if it wasn't a massive coordinated plot.
Definitely. Tokyo Electron stock prices took a hit over concerns about its TSMC relationship. Tokyo Electron has dismissed Chen, sent executives to Taiwan to smooth things over.
And public reaction?
Fierce online, lots of speculation, conspiracy theories, even personal attacks on the individuals named. The investigation is still ongoing, trying to figure out where those images ended up, if anywhere. TSMC isn't saying more publicly for now.
That's it for this week's Geowatch Weekly.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel for more and join DigiTimes for exclusive supply side intelligence.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.